A new Dragon Age game is coming out this year, so it's the perfect time to start talking about the other 3 games in the series. When I first picked up Dragon Age Origins, I didn't know how massive the fan base was, or how influential these games were. I had never even heard of BioWare before. My perspective is that of a newcomer to the series, because I picked up Dragon Age Origins at the height of the COVID pandemic in 2020. So I haven't been waiting a decade for a new glimpse of this new installment. But even so, these games have been such a comfort in those times. Needless to say, there will be spoilers ahead. The Dragon Age series as a whole has made its way into many gamers' hearts, even when it broke their hearts, in a good way. I count myself among them now, though I didn't know it at the time when I first fired up Origins on my old Xbox 360. It's been a while now from my first and second playthrough that I can confidently talk about them. And of course we begin with... I pride myself as being a completionist to the detriment of my time. I started playing the Witcher games after I finished reading all the Witcher books and short stories, which ended up making me tired of playing Witcher 3, arguably the best game in the series. So of course, when it came to Dragon Age, I began with the first one, Dragon Age Origins. I'll be honest, when I first started this game, I judged it very harshly. It was brown, it was a bit awkward to control, it didn't have an open world, and I really wanted to jump off the bridge at Ostagar for some reason, and it wouldn't let me, damn it. I admit I wanted to speed through this game, and the next one, only to begin playing Inquisition. I had been fed images of Dragon Age Inquisition, and it looked very nice, and it made me very curious. Either way, I spent most of the time at Ostagar trying to find my character's brother, and couldn't get out of the encampment to look for him. It was a bit frustrating. Somewhere in that frustration, the game really kicks in. In the middle of what's happening at Ostagar after the big intro, Duncan, this mentor figure, forces your character to drink darkspun blood, and he kills the one guy who refuses. And then a huge-ass battle ensues, and Duncan dies, and the king dies, and we are betrayed and left for dead in the Tower of Ashal, and just like that, I was hooked. It didn't matter anymore that the game was brown, or that I had trouble with the mechanics. No, the story had caught my attention. So I began paying more attention and doing my best to understand the gameplay mechanics. Origins gameplay and combat felt a little clunky to me in my first playthrough. There was a bit of a learning curve when it came to combat. I hadn't figured out that I could pause and give commands to the other companions until late in Act 3. But once I did, it was some of the more interesting game mechanics I had used. Since this is an RPG, you get the typical tree skill mechanic, which you can customize and level up however you see fit for each class. You can choose spells, talents, and tactics. This part was confusing to me, I think mostly because it looked weirdly complicated on the console. I figured it out on the computer though, and it was amazing. This effectively controls the behavior of the other companions in battle. You are able to precisely customize tactics and have your companions perform certain actions in combat based on specific conditions that you set. Say a party member has less than half their health. You can add a custom tactic for them to drink a potion of healing. Or you make it so that they attack the closest enemy or the one that has the lowest health, and so on. Think of it in terms of roleplay. You communicate with your fellow adventurers in battle to better support each other. As part of a group of 4 that come along to interact with the world, when combat begins, having the ability to control each companion's behavior is pretty useful. You can pause during combat to direct every party member on who or how to attack. I see this mechanic as a half turn-based mode, and you don't even have to play it like that. It's completely optional. You can go through the whole game without using this pause feature. What first irked me about this game was that it was an open world. I think it was because the beginning especially feels very contained to just one area and then another area. it doesn't get very expansive either way. The world is still divided into sections that you travel to for different quests or different groups of people. I have played other games that were not open world and wasn't bothered by it. Witcher 1 comes to mind. I hadn't even realized it wasn't open world, but the areas in that game were bigger, so it might have given the illusion of a more open world. Nonetheless, even though it is limited to certain areas, you still have plenty to explore. By comparison, as huge as Skyrim was, it seemed quite empty at times. I honestly now prefer games to be more like this, smaller areas but with more content in it, which can sometimes be more reactive to your character depending on what you do. The world building was very intriguing. In this world, a religious organization, the Chantry, keeps mages under strict control in circle towers. Mages get their powers from the Fade, so they must not succumb to temptations from demons in the Fade, otherwise they will be punished by the Templars of the Chantry. This punishment can go from anywhere to being killed to getting their powers stripped away. If mages aren't caught in time and stopped from the temptations of a demon, they can succumb to doing blood magic, which in turn causes the mage to become an abomination. This concept was genius. The overall story of Origins is a pretty straightforward one. There's a chosen one hero that has to team up with a group of people to defeat a big bad that could destroy the world. And the hero is one of the people able to actually accomplish it and stop the big bad. Interestingly enough, you as the main character aren't exactly the only chosen one in this situation. This game somehow avoids the cliche, and you have another person able to save the world. To avoid spoilers for the game, I'll just say that through a bunch of traveling and adventuring and politicking, you do reach the big bad at the end and save the world, one way or another. The story sounds very simple, and it kind of is in a way, but in that simplicity, nuance is giving a bigger headlight, and it is most skillfully done with the character companions and their motivation. We have a number of characters that we can recruit throughout the whole game. One of the first one that you meet is Alistair. He's got a few ways in which he can relate to the main character. When Duncan makes the main character drink Darkspawn blood, he's basically recruiting them into the Grey Wardens. Alistair is already a Grey Warden, so they have this common ground they share. He's basically the comic relief, especially in banter with other characters. And he's got a pretty big secret in his life that can play an even bigger role in the story depending on the main character's choices. Liliana. She's a walking encyclopedia. She's a follower of the Chantry faith and is very devout about it. She and Alistair both add to the Chantry part of the world building. She's from a different part of the world of Thedas, and she will tell you about it, and she likes shoes. When we get a mage from the Circle Tower, she's very motherly. She offers a perspective on the mages that actually follow the rules and stay faithful to the Chantry and don't go off the beaten path. Her exact opposite is Morrigan, a mysterious lady from the wilds, apostate mage. She and Alistair are always at each other's throats. In my opinion, she's the most valuable character, without which you would literally die. Ogren, the only dwarf of the party. He's a drinker, and not very charismatic. Zevran and Sten, these two both are very easy to miss, especially Sten. I'm sorry. Zevran is a member of a different faction in Thedas. He is also a comic relief to Alistair's comic relief, weirdly enough. He gives off this vibe of a Latino lover, but he's actually hiding a bigger backstory that you as a player can tease out of him if he can trust you. Now Sten, apart from being easy to miss, he is great as a tank in battle. He doesn't speak a lot. He is a different race, we can say, but he looks like a human. The Kunari will be overhauled in the second game, which is honestly better. I liked their aesthetic more. But other than that, there is not much to him. I missed him in my first playthrough. All the characters have rich backstories and personalities. I don't want to give too much away about each one, but they give an interesting perspective on different areas. Ogren with the dwarves gives an interesting perspective, Alistair and Liliana with the chantry, Morgan and Wynne with the mages, Zevran with a different faction, and elves. Oh yeah, Zevran, elf. I for one was very surprised when Alistair came up and gave my character a rose. It literally does feel like they have their own lives and interests. Each new area that you venture to has its own mini-story and characters. As the player, you are confronted with different cultures and need to seek their aid, but they also need you to resolve an issue for them, which is where the I scratch your back, you scratch mine quest lines for each area begin. As simplistic as that sounds, it made interacting with the world easy, and the engagement you get from it sinks the player more and more deeply into the world of Thedas. You have to think of a way to solve each encounter, and depending on your choices, you will get different outcomes. You can be more diplomatic, or you can go guns blazing. The ending as well can vary drastically depending on what you choose to do throughout the whole game. Your actions have consequences that will echo throughout the whole story. You might not even be the hero. Someone else is willing and able to lay down their lives to save Thedas. The fact that I started playing Origins during the pandemic only added to the game's appeal. Since the world, the real one, was dealing with this virus that was a threat to so many, and I had no power over it, playing a Grey Warden in Thedas gave me some kind of purpose. Thedas was getting overrun by a blight, infecting people and destroying whole cities. But since I was the Grey Warden, I could stop it. That sense of duty to help people, even if it was in a fictional setting, helped me keep sane. The story was spectacular. Even though at the time I didn't appreciate it in my rush for greener, pixelated pastures, the ending was very satisfying. It made me get over the frustrating end of Game of Thrones the previous year. So it is a great game, even after so many years. And I encourage everyone who is into video games to pick it up, no matter the year. Pick it up in 10 years, it's still gonna be great.